Okay, let's call together the committee meeting for April 18th on the planning committee, and we have a motion on the minutes. A mover and seconder, all those in favor, contrary, carried. Our next committee meeting will be May the 2nd at 4 o'clock in these council chambers. We have 4 items on the agenda this afternoon, so let's get right at it. The first one is a referral response, which was referred back an application by Land Oval Development Corporation for rezoning at 6851 and 6871 Elmbridge Way from industrial business park, which is an IB1, to a high-density mixed-use with ZMU 52, the Oval Village City Center. And the recommendation is to send it to public hearing on May the 15th. And we have Mr. Craig, Mr. Eng. Okay, we have your report. Anything to highlight before we get in to ask the applicant to make a presentation?
Thank you. Good afternoon, members of the committee. Would just like to make a few comments. This subject rezoning at 6851 and 6871 Elmbridge Way was referred at the December 19th, 2022 public hearing with specific direction to address traffic concerns in the lane. The report before committee this afternoon identifies the revisions to the project along with actions undertaken by the city to address traffic concerns in the lane in response to the public hearing referral. The specific changes presented in this report are in response to the transportation-related matters raised at public hearing, the overall mixed-use development proposal related to commercial and hotel uses, and residential units remain consistent with those presented at the public hearing in December of 2022. In response to concerns about hotel pickup and drop-off functions occurring off the lane, the project has been revised to relocate all hotel pickup and drop-off functions on site within the subject development's parkade. No vehicle pickup and drop-off or check-in functions will occur from the lane. The primary vehicle entrance and exit to the subject development will be from the new West Road access, which will be available to and open to all vehicle traffic to the project, including residents, visitors to the residential units, commercial units, hotel guests, and on-site employees. In response to concerns about traffic in the lane, the proposed development will restrict vehicle access to the project parkade from the lane, which would only allow hotel guests and on-site employees to enter the parkade from the lane. Vehicle traffic exiting the parkade from the lane would be restricted to on-site employees only. These restrictions to limit access to and from the lane will be implemented through a gate in combination with a security intercom and electronic fob. The development also provides for on-site loading, garbage, recycling, and hotel shuttle areas off the lane that complies with city bylaw requirements and arranged to allow vehicles to maneuver into these areas quickly and efficiently as possible. Use of the on-site loading bays and hotel shuttle area in the proposed project is restricted to medium-sized vehicles only. Large-sized vehicles that take longer to maneuver and park will not be permitted in the subject development. Through the rezoning considerations, a package of legal agreements will be secured to ensure truck size limits and restrictions on vehicle access to and from the lane are implemented and cannot be changed to ensure that all future residential owners and commercial tenants comply with the restrictions. As part of this development's required works, which includes dedication and construction of the new West Road connecting Elmbridge Way and River Road that will serve as the primary vehicle access to the project, lane widening and upgrades will be completed by the developer on the west side of the lane, consisting of an additional 1.5 meter pavement widening and 1.5 meter concrete transition area. When completed, this widened and upgraded lane will meet the lane standard for projects in the city center and be able to accommodate existing and future traffic and service functions in the lane. Finally, in response to vehicles parking and stopping in the lane that have been observed to negatively impact traffic flow in the area, the city has taken action to change the regulatory signage to no stopping. Community bylaws will also be undertaking proactive bylaw enforcement to address vehicles that are parked or stopped in the lane and require use of on-site loading and service areas within developments. happy to answer any questions.
Okay, are there any questions of staff at the moment? Carol? Just a minute here.
On page PLN 88, there's a drawing of the thing, and it shows River Road, and I'm wondering if there's going to be any widening of River Road, or like what is the space between the property line? It's like little dots. I'm just wondering what that is.
Through the chair, in response to Councillor Day, there are requirements for this project to undertake upgrades to River Road in the form of frontage improvements to improve the pedestrian realm. There will be an additional lane of travel also implemented along the River Road frontage.
An additional lane of travel. Because I only see two in this drawing.
In terms of there is an existing eastbound lane of travel that goes along the frontage of River Road. This project will implement another curb lane of travel, 2 lanes eastbound total.
Okay, so why would that not be in the drawing?
The drawing currently doesn't reflect the functional plan. Those would typically be updated once the functional plans have been approved as part of this overall project.
Okay, to confirm, the road on the west side, the new one, that would be right in and right out, is that correct?
At the intersection of River Road?
Yes, sorry, yeah.
Correct, yes.
Okay, so will there be like those cement dividers like you do in a lot of townhouse complexes to make sure that people don't disobey and go left when they're not allowed to?
The final design of the turn restriction along River Road has not yet been determined. That would be subject to the functional plan, but it could include signage in addition to actual physical turn restrictions to ensure that's in place.
Yeah, so, okay, that's good. And then the road on the west-hand side, it looks like it has pullouts to drop people off for, maybe pedestrians, like on the west side, the new road. If you look in the same map, there's a picture as a line, and there's cars parked on the right side of that road. Is that so that people can be dropped off by taxi or whatever?
The provisions for on both the east and west side of the new road would allow for parking for vehicles on either side. If those spots are available for parking, they could also facilitate for passenger pickup and drop off.
Okay, so really the primary passenger only is on the west side, and yet if you go to the drawing of the complex, it says that the primary pedestrian is actually on the northeast side. So I'm just wondering, I mean, if you drop someone off and it's pouring rain, they either walk through the car, the underground garage, or they would have to walk all the way around to River Road. So I'm assuming there'll be sidewalks inside the carport that will allow them to walk through, just like there is in the drawing?
Correct, yeah. For the new West Road, it will include all pedestrian improvements to the city standard.
Yeah, I'm curious why they wouldn't have made the primary pedestrian entrance on the west side as opposed to the east side, given that that's, if you were being dropped off by a taxi, for example, on that new West Road, I suppose the taxis would just have to drive through the carport, but if they wanted to get dropped off on the west side, they would have to walk all the way over to the east side. So I'm just curious why the pedestrian entrance is on the east side.
To the residential?
But yeah, it says primary pedestrian entrance on one of the maps here. And I'm just curious why they would put it on that side. Yeah, here it is. Main pedestrian lobby entrance.
Oh, that would be associated with the hotel component to the project? Yes, so that is basically where the hotel entrance from River Road would be for pedestrians. Internal to the parkade, if you're getting dropped off as required under the revised proposal, those pedestrians would have access to the hotel lobby internal to the site and from that drop-off area.
But you wouldn't be allowing people to pull over on the side of River Road, stop traffic, to let people walk into that entrance, right?
That's correct. That
There'd
would
be
not
no
be
stopping.
That would not be permitted.
Okay,
Do
good.
now.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, thanks very much then. Okay, and I gather the applicant has a presentation And welcome, identify yourself, and we'll give you 10 minutes. And
Arno Mattis
just
from
let
Arno
me
Mattis
make sure
Architecture.
I got you on, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, you're on.
Arno Mattis from Arno Mattis Architecture, and I have with me the developers from Landa and the traffic consultant from Bunt and Associates. Since the referral back to the planning committee, there have been a number of additional engagements, so I just wanted to summarize that we have listened to council and have gone back to the residents, specifically residents of Aura, and both the residential and the commercial components or tenants, and have had a number of meetings to the tune of about 7 engagements in total. In addition, the traffic consultant has also completed a more extensive study of the lane activity, a video study. And the traffic consultant is sitting behind me to answer specific questions. But I mentioned that because in addition to council's comments, and comments from Aura, the additional traffic study all kind of feed into the changes that were made since the public hearing. So I'll go through those quickly here in the slide. Specifically, a lot of discussion around the lane itself and the lane design. We're following specific directions from Richmond Engineering on this. There is a 1.5 meter widening plus an additional 1.5 meter for a total of 3 meters in increase to the current width. I believe that with the additional rolled edge on the other side, on the Aura side, is about 10 meters total. The hotel drop-off has now been completely removed. I think that was Councillor Au specifically at the public hearing mentioned that. And then additional clarification around loading and how trucks load in and out of the facility and controls related to residential access to the parking system itself. Next slide. So here, if you look, there's been a lot of kind of boxes with text. I'll just quickly summarize. So the original design had a hotel drop-off at the top sort of left corner of the development. That's been internalized. You can sort of follow your eye down just below the top left corner. You can see 3 cars sort of sitting in the interior of the parking system. That whole corner of the internal parking system has been completely redesigned to accommodate internal drop-off. Immediately to the right of the hotel lobby and the internal drop-off along the lane is a new shuttle bus bay. So no shuttle bus parking on the lane. All of it is internalized with direct access to the lobby. Immediately to the right of that is a completely redesigned loading bay, which allows multiple trucks to be accessed all at the same time, including a very large bay just to the end of the loading area, which allows all of the garbage to be completely loaded and unloaded off the lane with an overhead swinging garbage truck. So it's an extra height clearance for that loading bay in particular. Then we have the lane access ramp for our P1. This is kind of a secondary parking access area. It's directly opposite the Aura commercial parking entrance. We've studied this extensively with our parking consultant and feel that this is the optimal alignment for the parking entrance. In addition, our loading area is staggered with the Aura loading bay, so it's not opposing. So we feel that that's the optimal arrangement to allow trucks to park easily without conflicting with each other. As we go around to the New West Road, in the center of the road, you'll see a blue arrow, and that is our primary residential entrance and hotel entrance. And occupants of this development will be using this facility and be directed here through a series of wayfinding and signage elements that will be worked out at the development permit stage. I think the other slides just sort of show in a little bit more detail what exactly is happening here, so we can kind of go through this quickly. But you can see the dimensions there on the lane. On the right-hand side, those are the existing lane dimensions. So the 6.2 meter lane width was the existing lane, or is the current condition. And the dimension on the left-hand side, that shows the 7.5 meter plus the additional 1.5. That's the proposed new lane width. And that's under direction by the engineering department. Next. This just shows in a little more detail the lane access to our P1 and our loading area. Next. This shows kind of a visual of the garbage and loading area and our parking entrance from the lane, plus the extra lane width. Yeah, here's another view looking down. And then inside, once you get inside, there'll be wayfinding inside the parkade that will direct to the hotel drop-off, which I think the next slide shows. Yeah, here it is. So this has been completely redesigned to show what the hotel entrance will look like from inside the parking area. Next. Another view. New West Road entrance. Next. Parking entrance with signage. Potential signage elements at the corners of Elmridge and also at River Road, directing entrance traffic for the hotel up the New West Road and into the mid-block parking entrance. Next. That's it. Yeah, that's it.
Any questions? Carol?
So I think this is a much better plan, and I was really worried about how the trucks could possibly empty the bins, but I understand you've raised the ceiling there.
Yes,
So,
we took out a residential unit to allow that to happen, yeah.
well, you got to be able to do it, right? So
Yeah.
I think that the lane is great. There is kind of a typo, though, that I'm a little concerned about. On the one, if you go back to this one here,
Sure.
it says that the lane is 6.2, and then it says you're adding 1.3 meters, but you're actually adding 1.5
1.5, actually 3 meters in total, so 1.5 of
So
lane
like,
width and then 1.5
these two are
for
different,
walkway.
okay? This is the one that you guys sent me on an email, and it says 1.5, but if you look, see it says 1.3? Lane,
Yeah, I think,
that's a typo, right?
yeah, I think that's it.
So there is a 0.15 curve, 15 centimeter, so it is 1.35 plus 0.15, which becomes 1.5 meter wide.
You add the two together.
Okay,
It will be the 3 meters, that's being
yeah, that's what I thought, it's just
requested.
that's different, those two are different, so. Okay, good, that's all
Okay,
I
that's
have.
it. Anybody else? Okay, is there anybody else in the audience who would like to speak to us on this item? Thank you very much. All right, the staff recommendation is be forward to the May 15th public hearing, and I would so move. Seconded. Any further discussion? It's a much improved, and thank you very much to staff for working with the applicant to mitigate many of the issues that are going on. So hearing no further discussion, all those in favor? Contrary, carried. We're going to May 15th. Okay. Thank you. All right, the next item is a referral on a response on the heritage procedures. And there are a number of recommendations. These are upgrading, but I'll let Minnie and do the, just give us the brief highlights. We've got your report. Carol, we're still in session. Thank you.
To the chair, I'll ask Ms. Park to provide just a really brief summary of the report.
Yep,
Thank you,
please.
Mr. Chair. The purpose of this report is to respond to the Planning Committee's referral to streamline the application review processes for non-heritage properties located in the Steveston Village Heritage Conservation Area. Staff have also conducted a comprehensive review of heritage-related application processes and have identified areas for improvements. This report contains a series of recommendations to streamline the application processes for properties in the Steveston Village Heritage Conservation Area, as well as protected heritage properties located outside the Steveston Village Heritage Conservation Area. So currently, both a heritage alteration permit and development permit are required for any exterior changes to properties in Steveston Village. So the first recommendation is to reduce the number of required permits by requiring either a HAP or a DP. So staff recommend that development permit be required to review exterior changes to non-heritage properties, and a heritage alteration permit be required to review changes to protected heritage properties. There would be a few exceptions where a non-heritage property would still require heritage alteration permits, such as signs or building colors, which cannot be regulated through a form and character development permit. The second recommendation is to clarify permit exemption criteria and expand staff's delegated authority to consider minor projects. Staff recommend any minor repair or maintenance work that does not change the exterior be exempt from the HAP and DP requirements. In terms of delegated authority, the current heritage procedures bylaw delegates authority to issue heritage alteration permits for exterior painting, roof replacements, and signs for non-heritage properties to the Director of Development. In addition to the current provisions, it is recommended that authority to issue heritage alteration permits for like-for-like replacements or minor changes to landscape features or accessory buildings that are not character-defining elements be delegated to the Director of Development. For delegated authority to issue development permits for non-heritage properties, it is recommended that issuance of a development permit for like replacement, roof replacements, and minor exterior changes that do not exceed $75,000 in construction value, which do not change the overall form and character and do not involve additional floor area, be delegated to the Director of Development. The next recommendation is to expand material options for awnings and canopies. Currently, only fabric awnings are permitted in Steveston Village, but there are other alternative materials that resemble the appearance of fabric and of high quality. So staff recommend the DP guidelines for awnings be amended so alternative materials can be considered for non-heritage properties. Staff also recommend that public notification signage requirement for HAP and Heritage Revitalization Agreement applications be formalized citywide by including the signage templates in the Heritage Procedures bylaw, and the meeting notice requirements be introduced for major Heritage Alteration Permit and Heritage Revitalization Agreement applications. Lastly, to align with these recommendations, staff are proposing associated administrative updates. Staff propose to reorder items in the Heritage Procedures bylaw to make the bylaw more user-friendly and remove the application forms from the bylaw so the forms can be updated as needed without having to go through the bylaw amendment process. And also staff are proposing to update the fees to better reflect the scope of work that is typically associated with a complex heritage alteration permit or heritage revitalization agreement application. So that was a quick summary of the proposed changes, and happy to answer any questions.
Well, thank you for everything, and I'm glad to see on our page 126, attachment 3, a brief summary, and that it was working out well. Okay, Alexa.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're on.
Thank you for this. It looks quite comprehensive, the work that you've done. And sometimes I joke that we're purveyors of bureaucracy here, and this is going to cut down some red tape, certainly. Can you say on average, or as an example, like how long would it normally take to go through this process, and how quickly do you think that this will change it to?
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, I would say the overall timeline can be reduced by 2 to 3 months if it's delegated to staff for consideration.
Okay, and normally how long might it take?
Out minimum 3 to 4 months
Okay,
for a development permit and heritage alteration permit.
okay, so probably by at least half. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I got Michael on, just hang on, Michael, let's make sure we connect with you.
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Okay.
Yeah, I can hear
You're
you.
on.
Thanks.
Good, thank you.
Thank you very much. Through the chair, just a quick question to staff, and I'm not sure if this is, I think it's the right time. This is somewhat related to this item, and in addition to the heritage inventory review and update that council just received as a memo this week. And I'm just not sure in the heritage procedure response here, because I remember when it was made, is there anything related to consequences for the loss of a heritage building, or the changes made without following the procedures? I'm just looking at the attachment, the list of inventory that we received, and apparently there's been 10 heritage sites removed from the inventory, and I think the reason was given that they don't exist anymore. So I'm not sure if they were demolished without approval. So if you could comment, do you know about those 10, and how does this item on the agenda maybe make, how does it include maybe enforcement or following through with the true protection of some of these sites? Thanks.
Mr. Chairman,
Okay,
perhaps I can respond to
okay,
that.
Joe.
The memo that Councillor Wolf refers to was provided by our Community Services Division, and really it relates to different properties. It's a heritage list with information about the various properties, and although I think 10 were removed, others were added, but Community Services has more information about that. It is a little bit different, though, to the Steveston area, where some years ago you did a very detailed study, and we have 17 buildings and landmarks that are actually designated as heritage, and so rather than just placed on a list, and the enforcement tools that you have for designated property is far greater. The consequences of not following the rules are potentially far greater. Although this report does also deal with non-designated properties in the Steveston area, I would say that because of the designation of the 17, it's a different kettle of fish, if you will, to the list that the memo referred to.
Okay. You're all right with that? Okay, anybody else? Okay, well then, I'd like to move the staff recommendation. I'm not going to read it all out. We're changing bylaw 139, and we're doing some considerations with the various statutes that it follows, and it'd be introduced and given first, second, third reading. And then we have a number 6 with regard to the fees and the application fees in number 7. So I would so move. Seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Contrary? Carried. Well done. Thank you very much. Okay, and item number 3 is the 2017 to 22 Child Care Needs Assessment Strategy Update. We've got Chris Dugan, and we're to receive this for information, and the information to be posted on website, etc. Chris, anything else to add to your great report?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have nothing further to add, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, Carol? Thank you very much. One thing.
It's always interesting to read the numbers. How does Richmond compare to other communities in terms of our daycare spaces?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, Richmond is doing exceptionally well in the provision of licensed childcare across our community. Many communities in the Lower Mainland have childcare space numbers that are around the 20% threshold, and we're sitting currently at 35.6%. So we are definitely a leader in this area.
That's great. And a follow-up question on that. How many $10 a day daycares do we have in Richmond?
We currently have 7 of our city-owned facilities that are $10 a day sites, and an additional, I believe there are 3. One of them may have left the program, so I believe there are 3 additional ones, so 10 currently.
All right, thank you.
Excellent. Jack?
Yes. First of all, I think it's a
Okay,
very
you're
good
on.
report, and I'm glad to hear that we are, in terms of the ratio of the spaces and number of children, we're doing much better than other cities. Now, I understand that in the past 2 or 3 years, there's a few large-scale daycare centers in Richmond. So is that still going to be the trend, that people are planning for large centers?
Through the chair to Councillor Au, there were a number of large facilities that opened in Richmond over the past couple of years. A couple of those large centers did receive significant funding through the province's capital program. There have been changes to the New Spaces Fund that now only enable local governments, Indigenous governments, and school districts and health authorities to apply for that funding. So the number of large private centers is anticipated to decrease.
Okay, good, yeah, because I think probably too big, for the welfare of the kids, who are attending the daycare centers. We always understand that the smaller centers work better for the emotional and social development of kids. So I think that's a good sign.
Okay, thank you. Andy, I got you.
Thanks, and through the chair. Thanks for the report. It sounds like we're doing quite well in terms of our strategy and our goals. With the 36.5, I think, or 35.6% of our needs being met, can you just comment on how do we quantify what our needs are? I mean, clearly there's a total number of children in Richmond. Not all of them go to daycare or require daycare of this type. So how do we establish those numbers?
Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, the 35.6 number is quantified specifically through child population in comparison to daycare spaces. As far as anticipating what the future need is, we're currently in the early stages of developing our new 10-year childcare strategy, and a component of that will be a needs assessment to determine the current and future childcare needs that our community has.
Okay. Yeah, that'll be interesting, because I imagine it's a little bit of a difficult number to actually pin down with absolute certainty.
Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, it is. We've seen throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, we saw initially some decreases in childcare use across our community. And then with the recent fee reductions that have been put in place by the province, we've seen a significant uptake again in childcare usage. So the timing of the new strategy and needs assessment will be very instrumental in us having a better understanding of our current and future needs.
Great, thanks.
I'm seeing no others. I just had two comments, if I may. Great report, as always, and appreciate all the good work we're doing in the community in terms of childcare. And, we need to continue to get ahead. In terms of circulation, I would suggest it's a no-brainer, really, but we should give it to the school trustees as well. I think that they should be the ones to know what's going on coming through, but also the ministers responsible. With $10 a day childcare came up. Well, I know we're going to give it to the MP, but does Ottawa, and the guy or gal that's writing the check, if you wish, or signing the checks, that department know what's going on in Canada and stuff like that? So I would suggest that probably 2 or 3 more copies to go out to the ministers. I'd add those to your list in number 2. School board and ministers responsible in Victoria and in Ottawa. I think very often we don't circulate enough and they don't get the information. And no disrespect, but if you're a backbencher, you don't have a lot of influence with the man and woman that's sitting behind the Prime Minister, behind the Premier. And so we have to know what politics being what it is, because we might want to get some more money and some grants, okay, which I know we do. Anything else? All right, I would move the recommendations. Seconded. All those in favor, contrary, carried. Thank you. Good job. All right, and the last one is a housekeeping request of abandoned bylaws, and I want everybody to read that. Okay, page 198. And if you can find the oldest one that was supposed to have been done, you get a prize. Okay. Anything, nothing in particular, you can see the road closures, et cetera, and other areas that developed. So I would move those. Oh, you can speak to it, sir.
Thank
I'm
you, Mr.
sorry, I thought.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one small correction.
I got April 19th, 2023.
Yes, thank you,
I
Mr.
picked
Chair.
that one up.
Thank you.
I thought through you. But anybody, any questions on them? Okay. Carol? Sorry, just a minute here. No, I got to get right. I did. There.
Now we're good. Thank
It's
you.
working.
So these two that we're abandoning are from, first reading was January 2018. That's like 5 years ago. And I certainly can see why we're abandoning these bylaws, and these haven't been developed, but some of them are quite large. Like the first one, 9815 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, like 10 lots on Douglas Street. So what happens now? Does it go back to the original zoning? What happens?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, because the rezoning bylaw that was proposed was never brought forward to be adopted, the current existing zoning of the property will remain on. Any future development of the property will require a future rezoning and subsequent development permit process.
So it's possible that these lots, an even better plan could come forward once this is sort of released back into the public domain. Yeah. Next question I have is, it mentions on page 199 that there's many bylaws that are older than a year, but the applicant is taking active steps, and you do not recommend abandoning those. How many are there approximately?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, there are approximately 60 or so bylaws that are in that current state. Again, those are projects that are currently being actively progressed by developers and applicants. There are a significant amount of considerations that some developers have to achieve in order to advance the project. Part of it is development permit issuance, as well as paying fees and registering legal agreements on title, which can take some time to complete.
So it's not our fault they're slowing down, it's their fault because they're having trouble meeting the requirements?
Correct. So through the chair to Councillor Day, we continue to work with the development community in order to try to advance those projects in line with council's policy.
And my last question is, what happens, you see it all the time, someone comes in with a standard size lot on Ontario Road, they want to subdivide it into 2 lots to build 2 smaller houses, the house gets leveled, everything's approved, and then a for sale sign goes up. So it's obvious that there's a lot of people that are buying these properties for the sole purpose of selling them as 2 lots. What's your position on that?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, with respect to that particular question, when the developer does satisfy all of the requirements of the rezoning bylaw, and that does get adopted by council, if the developer chooses to then subsequently sell the property in order to further build those homes, they are still obligated to meet the requirements that were established through the rezoning process.
Yeah, it just seems that it just stalls at that point. And is there anything that we can do to move that along? Is there something we can hold over their head to say, hey, let's get on with this?
Okay, Joe's got a sorry. Go ahead.
Through the chair, honestly, I think that a lot of the delays in developments are actually with developers. The whole narrative from senior government is that it's municipal, but if you actually measure it out, many developers spend an awful lot of time figuring out their designs, the market, phasing, all of that. So, the 1 year, it's there, but you kind of have to be flexible, and it's a judgment call. If someone is a complete time waster and we don't think there's any prospect of them moving forward, and occasionally you get that, then we would recommend to close that file. But if a developer is working reasonably diligently, and as Josh said, they have to meet all of your conditions, no matter how long they take, then we don't automatically shut them down after 12 months. And on your other, issue, quite frankly, there are a lot of flippers in the market in development, and some people, they specialize in flipping, especially in a buoyant market where it's hard to fail. So, you get folks who probably don't have the capital to actually build anything, but they've got enough money to pick up a site, run it through rezoning, and then flip it once they've subdivided it. And, there's nothing really that we can do about it other than just generally discourage it. I mean, usually some would say that it's a valuable service because the builders, you might end up with in your situation where the 2 lots, they're bought by separate builders, and each builder can, build one of those. That's a good outcome, but a lot of people, myself included, believe the flippers actually erode affordability because they're not doing it for free, right? So I think in a buoyant market, flipping is just, it's there. It's a function, and it'd be very hard to extinguish it.
Well, just Just playing devil's advocate, just for a moment, if I may, Chair. Okay, so we've given them permission to tear down the house, probably eliminate 2 rentals, and then we've allowed them to bring in a whole bunch of sand. So now everybody who lives around them has got sand blowing in, you know, and their cars are dirty and their houses are dirty. Isn't there something we could do, like maybe requiring a bond, that you must start construction, i.e. the foundation, within 12 months, so that we don't see these empty lots sitting and sitting and sitting?
Through the chair, on bigger developments, you're kind of protected because the development permit lapses after, I think, 2 years, Wade. Yeah. And so in those cases, the developers are motivated, but they're motivated anyway because they've got more money on the line, right? On the smaller developments, I mean, the cold hard reality is that you have less controls over the small stuff, you know, the single family rezonings for a couple of small lots than you do with the bigger developments. So we don't have a development permit requirement for those, and so that deadline to either get going with construction or lose your approval, your development permit approval, it doesn't exist. So it can happen, but I think from my perspective, the conditions of rezoning must be met even if the property does change hands, and then if there's an unsightliness or a nuisance factor, that can be dealt with separate as a bylaw issue rather than as a development issue.
So if I was beside one of those empty sand lots, I could phone up the city and say, do something. I've got all this sand blowing into my house.
Through the chair, if there's an actual nuisance, yes, or if there's litter drifting or sand for that matter, yes.
Yeah. If I may too, I think we have to be realistic as opposed to being punitive. I think you've got to be realistic and know the development community. I have 4 houses around me. And it's taken a year and a half, 2 years to get them going. And they cannot get the workforce to do it, okay? They cannot get people to lay the foundation. They cannot people to do the walls. They cannot get people to do the roofing. There are groups of workforces going around, and that's all they do, the trusses. All they do is the wall. All they do is a setup. And if you talk to developers, they are having a real tough time. We've got stucco on a couple of them. The roof finally went on a couple of them, and it stopped. And I stopped by the other day. How come you're not finishing? I can't get anybody to work. I've got to wait. I've got to wait my turn. I'm hoping to get a guy from Cloverdale, etc. And the other thing too, we got to be realistic. You know, we think that development is a magic thing. Many of these guys are looked after by the bank. If they don't get the money, they can't go to the next step. They can't get the money to go to the next step. I think we've got to put things on total perspective and stick with what we do the best. And that was this, we can give out density and rezoning. And that's what we should be staying with. So anyhow, that's just a comment, but I think we need to understand that what really happens in the development industry. You know, I'd love to get those trucks off our street in Williams and Springmount Gate, but I can't get the workforce. So anyhow, all right. Anything else of staff on that one? Did I get a question on it? All those in favor? Sorry, Andy, did you have a?
Laura.
Okay. Oh, sorry, Laura.
Okay.
Gotcha.
You gotta turn her on.
Yep, it's coming. Oh, wait, can't hear you.
Oh.
Speak into your mic.
Oh, well.
It's your mic. Go ahead.
She's on, I think.
You're on, but we can't hear you. You'll have to speak in your mic. Turn your volume up. Okay.
Sorry, I'll try one more time.
There we are.
Yeah.
Keep talking. Can you hear us?
Yeah?
Okay, there you are. We had you there. Speak louder.
Sorry about that.
Here we are.
Progress, not perfection. Okay, I just had a question, just a follow-up comment about the dust lots that we were just discussing, Councillor Day and Mr. Ersick. it's kind of a little bit off topic, but I know that we issue occupancy permits before fencing and landscaping is done. And so I've had a few people complain to me that they're living next door to a house that was constructed and they were able to get their occupancy permit so they can just live in it or list it for sale, but they didn't complete it. So there is still just an absolute ton of dust blowing into their property all day long. They actually took down the fence that was up and never replaced it, the people who were building. So we might want to look into a few other steps before issuing occupancy, just to ensure it's not affecting the neighbors.
Through the chair, we can certainly follow up. We've got James at the back. I don't know whether he's got anything to comment there. Looks like he wants to come down.
Okay, we're going to get a response for you.
Great.
Mr. Cooper, go ahead.
Through Mr. Chair to Councillor Gillanders, houses is a very strange, it's not strange, but in the city of Richmond, houses do not have occupancy permits granted. They are granted completion once everything that's on the building permit application is done. Now, things like nuisance leftovers, like fences not built, those are issues that we'll be happy to abrogate if the homeowner or the affected neighbor would want to give us a call. We would go and mediate that situation. I don't believe it's a bylaw or a building code situation, but we oftentimes do work out a solution between neighbors.
I'll get them to do that. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Any other comments or questions? Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Any managers report? Anything to? Oh, here we go. Yep, got one, two.
Okay. So, Mr. Chair, we have a new building code upon us coming sometime around December the 10th. We will have a new edition of the British Columbia Building Code. The salient features, I think there are three that we should take a note of. Is one, there will be a higher seismic resistance requirement that will be for taller buildings. About 20 to 30% more stiff would be the construction. We also have a carbon emissions for the first time requirement that is pegged to the STEP code. So if a building is required to be at an energy efficiency STEP code, it will also have an associated maximum carbon emission as well. And the third thing is that we find this very interesting, that in new constructions for multi-family residential units, there will be provisions for aging in place. So there'll be accessibility requirements so that for people aging in place and care in place, that residential facilities will already have the physical dimensions that will allow that going into the future.
Okay, hang on. We got James.
Question.
We got Michael. Okay, can we connect? Are we okay?
Great.
Yep, you're on.
Thank you very much. Through the chair, this was actually going to be a question, but the manager's update caught it. So I was informed that on May 1st, the BC Building Code changes are coming, and that the one you mentioned second there, known as the Zero Carbon Step Code, formerly known as the Carbon Pollution Standard, is something that we have to opt in as a city. So I'm just curious, would that mean that at the next planning meeting, which is May the 2nd, staff would be looking for planning committee's approval to opt in? Or is it something that staff can just be already directed to do?
Through Mr. Chair to Councillor Wolf, no, it's already automated or automatically built in. Should the municipality already have endorsed the Energy Step Code, these are automatic provisions that go along with them.
Okay, thank you. A follow-up question, a last one through the chair. Is your interpretation of it at this stage that those buildings, those new construction buildings that choose the zero carbon step code, that they would be building electrification style where there would be no natural gas hookup? Is that how you're interpreting it?
Through Mr. Chair to Councillor Wolf, there will be reductions. There are maximum limits to the greenhouse gases that each construction can emit on an operational basis. It will not say that you may not have any natural gas burning appliances. It would just simply say that there will be a maximum that can be emitted. I think practically, a home builder or homeowner would probably have a choice between space heating or domestic hot water being provided through the burning of natural gas.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. We'll see how it progresses, and I hope to see that some of the builders maybe choose to go the way or leave the natural gas out. So thank you very much.
You're good.
Welcome.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr. Craig?
Thank you. Just wanted to provide committee with an update regarding the Brighouse United Church site. So you may recall that there was a memo circulated to Mayor and Council late summer of last year indicating that that project had encountered some funding challenges and that the site was actively being marketed for sale. It is our understanding that there is a sale pending and that provided that sale goes through, the previous rezoning application will be officially withdrawn.
Okay, good. Any questions? Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Seeing none, motion to adjourn, we're adjourned. Thank you.